Hey everyone, welcome to the Pool Genius Instant Bracket Reaction Show. It's Selection Sunday. We just got the bracket in. You can see that right next to us. Duke coming in hot as the number one seed, number one overall seed. Of course, no surprise there, but there were a couple surprises in the bracket, but not really many, Jason. Is that right? This bracket was pretty much, I know you do bracket predictions.
Yeah.
You're tracking who goes where, putting those predictions out almost every day leading up to today, the selection show. And you were pretty much spot on. So, were there a couple things that surprised you? And what were they? And how do you see the region shaping out overall?
Yeah, there's nothing that hugely surprised me in this bracket. The 68 teams I had projected in got in. I was borderline on Texas at the borderline. And they said VCU would have been out. I would have had VCU. I would have been wrong because I would have had VCU over Texas had they lost that game. I thought they did enough yesterday, but the committee would have disagreed with me. But as it stands, 68-68, I was worried about Missouri getting bumped to the 11 and in the play-in. As it turns out, safely getting to play in St. Louis, not even having to play in the play-in game. But that was one of the few. It's not really a surprise. It is a surprise only in the sense the committee hasn't always done this, so I didn't do it in my bracket. Michigan State and Purdue swapped, and the Big Ten game finishes right before the committee. So I've rarely had success making a change when something happens in the Big Ten game, and they actually did it this year. And so that was one I missed slightly, but I would have had Michigan State as my last two, Purdue as my first three, so that was completely tomato. Purdue ends up getting the 2 in the West region instead of Michigan State. And then the one that surprised me, though, because if that game mattered, why didn't Vanderbilt beating Florida put them at least on the 4 line? I don't get Vanderbilt as a 5 after beating Florida. Their resume is now better than Alabama, and they could have straight swapped SEC teams. To me, Alabama is the worst of that group. They have more questions with defense, and we saw that when they lost to Ole Miss. I think Vandy deserved a 4 at least, but they're still in the 4-5 game. So, no major surprises. Those are the biggest ones. I mean, every mid-major got seated exactly where I had them, with the exception of 115 versus 16 swap, and that's it.
Yeah, and it was, it's kind of low-hanging fruit to pick on the selection committee. We do it every year. We question all the decisions they made, but we just want a shred of consistency at the very end of the day. Like you said, the Purdue win over Michigan matters, but the Vanderbilt win over Florida wasn't really enough to bump them up a seed there. I was a little bit nervous, I'm not going to lie, when it came down to that last region that they announced. Nebraska and Vanderbilt had not been announced. I am a Nebraska alum. And this is the best team Nebraska's pretty much almost ever had. And I was worried that Vanderbilt was going to get the 4, Nebraska was going to get the 5 and have to go against McNeese, which that would be a bad matchup for Nebraska. That would be a troubling matchup if you're a Husker fan, because McNeese has that guard play that can really solve that matchup zone from Nebraska. So I'm thankful that they didn't draw that matchup. Still, obviously, work to be done. But I think I want to start with that matchup, and I want to start with the 5-12 games and ask you, because every year we look at the bracket and we go, hey, the 5-12 matchup, that is ripe for the picking for upsets. That's not really the case as we see it at first glance this year, because every single 5-12 game has a point spread of 8 or 9 points or higher. And that includes Vanderbilt, as I'm looking on DraftKings Sportsbook here, 10.5-point favorite over McNeese. How do you make sense of that game? And then the 5-12 overall, looking at like St. John's versus Northern Iowa and all throughout the bracket.
Yeah, I'm trying to glance because I have our numbers in front of me here that if you are a subscribe to our Bracket Picks product, you'll see when we go live later tonight, our full-filled 1 through 68 power ratings on teams, things where we looked at all of the stats. That's what we've been working on. I'm going backwards hat kind of guy, like Spencer today.
That's how you know he's serious. That's how you know it's serious
I
time.
haven't done my hair today. We were finishing up our final notes on the teams playing today. Had to write Penn this afternoon unexpectedly. Was prepared if I had to write Wichita State up. But we were handicapping all the teams. So if you are a subscriber, if you subscribe to our bracket picks, you're going to not only get customized bracket picks, you're going to get access to our handicapping of the 1 through 68 teams that are used to power our simulations. So I'm looking at some of those, and it doesn't surprise me, but part of that is because of like, there's just a gap. There's just a gap that's grown between mid-majors and the power teams. With all the transfers, I mean, now we're getting so many the best mid-major guys are transferring to the power teams and turning them into juggernauts. And so the top end of the Power Fives and the gap has grown. We also had some upsets. I mean, Yale just lost today. They would have been a 12. We lost some other 12s potentially because I originally had High Point as a 13. They moved up because of the Yale upset. So they were like my last one in. I think the one I have rated the highest happened to draw the toughest 5 seed, which is Northern Iowa as a team I think is a sleeper from the mid-majors. I had them to win the Missouri Valley at great odds, and they hit because of my analysis of their injury situation lineups. They're a much better team than their record. Problem is they just drew St. John's, a team who is underseeded as a 5. The bracketology part of me gets why St. John's is a 5, and that's what I predicted. That doesn't mean I agree with it. St. John's should not be a 5. I'm sorry. They should not be a 5. This team is pretty much as good as last year's that got a 2. I know they got upset, but this team just beat UConn, the 2 seed, by 20 points just last night. I'll spoiler alert, we have St. John's power rated above UConn. I mean, and UConn's the 2 seed in the same region. But St. John's draws a much tougher draw than UConn's going to draw with the 15 seed. St. John's is drawing the best 12. But because St. John's is so good, we now see all these lines are elevated for the 5-12s. That said, I like Northern Iowa as the team. If I were picking a random, I would have loved to see Northern Iowa against Texas Tech because I think they're the most vulnerable 5, but that's not how it shook out.
Yeah, and so Sean Stewart said he dropped us the comment here, and he said exactly what you're speaking to. He is worried about St. John's against Northern Iowa. How do you see that game matching up? I understand St. John's pretty solid team, especially on the glass and inside. Do you think they're going to be too much for UNI? I know that spread is around 9.5 now, so it probably doesn't make a ton of sense if you're looking at it for an upset pick. Even in it really comes down to your pool size if you want to look at that, and your scoring rules, obviously. But if you even want to consider that an upset pick, but you are a Northern Iowa guy, you had them to win the MVC. So how do you just see that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough matchup for them. But that said, what has St. John's sometimes struggled with? Scoring, shooting consistently. Now they made some shifts here to try to, after the debacle at UConn, their last loss that embarrassed them, they got revenge on. That said, their scoring can be inconsistent. I mean, they're a great defensive team. Well, Northern Iowa out of the mid-majors is a really good defensive team, and then is better in the scoring ranks with their current lineup than their season metrics would suggest. I'm going to pull up just some notes. We have detailed notes we will have for you in our product if you're a subscriber. But this Northern Iowa team, Tristan Smith, and I noted this when I made the pick for them for the future, forward, he missed time. They had guys who were inefficient, basically taking that time. They're not a deep team. Northern Iowa's not. So they need to control pace in this game. But with him back and with being able to basically reduce the minutes of guys who were not efficient off the bench, they've been substantially better. So Tristan Smith is kind of like that driver scorer inside. They have shooters, but need him to play off of them. So they're a better offensive team now than if you look at their KenPom numbers. Still not a great, still built on the strength of their defense. But in that way, they're very similar to St. John's, who's built on the strength of their defense. So this is, I haven't looked at the totals. I'm going to guess this is a low total game when we see the totals come out. I know we saw the spread, but I would imagine the total on this one isn't going to be very high.
Trying to find it. There's so many lines out there now. I got 131.5, which is one of the lower ones.
Yeah, I was thinking he'd probably be barely touching 130. Okay. Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah, and then so there are some there's just so much to digest right now when you're first looking at it. It's like drinking out of a firehouse.
That's right.
But I wanted to spotlight a couple matchups because we haven't even gotten past the first round yet, but I want to at least touch on these to get your opinion or at least flag them. So it looks like VCU, the number 11 seed against North Carolina, that's probably going to be your prime upset spot if you're looking at anyone an 11 seed and above. VCU, when I saw that open, they were a 1.5-point dog. Of course, North Carolina got knocked out the ACC tournament, suffering from some injury news too, and that may have bumped them down a seed to get that 6 seed. So that's probably going to be one of your more obvious classic upsets of the first round. And that's really the biggest one that I've flagged, other than these 7-10s games, if you consider those upsets even.
Here's the thing. North Carolina, even if you look at like our power ratings, Ken Palms, all that stuff, they were not profiling as like a top 20 team even before Caleb Wilson's injury. They won some key games and they were going to be seeded, I think, as a 5. And with the results, they slipped to a 6. But quite frankly, if I'm lining them up and I'm handicapping this field, they're outside the top 30. If I'm like the team that's going to take the court, so they're really more like an 8 or 9 seed, which makes sense why that line's so low, because this VCU team's a little more variable. They've been playing well, certainly haven't played consistently the level of competition that North Carolina's faced, but yeah, I get why this line is what it is. It's going to be a low total because this North Carolina team, I mean, if they played out the season with this roster, they're probably more closer to the bubble than they are. They're probably closer to last year's bubble team that ended up barely getting in than what they expected to be halfway through this season. They still have some talent. I'm not saying that, but they would not power rate in my top 30. And I doubt they'll show up in our top 30 when we end up discussing it tonight. I'm looking at the numbers and they're right on the edge. I mean, we have them basically even with Clemson, right? Who they played. TCU in the 8-9 game, Utah State. Miami, Missouri are just below them. So, I mean, and teams that are playing in the play-in game and teams that didn't make the field. So, very much, and then VCU's in like not too far below them. So I get the numbers about what I would expect, 1.5 points.
So you mentioned the play-in game there. We would be remiss if we did not talk about that, because certainly a lot of talking heads on SportsCenter and throughout the bracket airwaves will be talking about this. Miami, Ohio did get into the first 4. They will be playing in Dayton on Wednesday, that game. So the second part of those games. They draw SMU, and they are an 8.5-point underdog, which is substantial for a first 4 game of at-large bids like that. What do you make of it? Do you think they have a shot against SMU? Of course they do. But man, it's an uphill battle.
To get me to take Miami of Ohio offering that number. I think I posted in Discord. Let me get what our number was going to be. And certainly there's lots of questions around either side of this game, right? There's a lot of variation. SMU did not look good down the stretch. They certainly, had some reasons for that. Let me pull up my SMU notes real quick here. BJ, with the BJ Edwards injury, he had missed, is it 6? He'd missed like the last 4 games, and they lost 5 of their last 6. And we don't know for sure. They're saying, I forget how they phrased it. It was very lawyerly because they're trying to get a bid. And he was supposedly questionable for the ACC, but he didn't play. And so we just don't know until the player takes the court. He's been dealing with an ankle injury. They have not looked good. So that number is a great number for Miami, Ohio, if they're not at full strength and if Edwards isn't full strength. That's probably a fair number if he is, and if it's the version of SMU before the last 2 weeks. And so I kind of lean. I don't love Miami, Ohio as an upset, but getting to play in Dayton, a short distance, getting SMU on shorter rest than they would have had if they had to play on Thursday or Friday, all those things can factor in because we're still only 3 or 4 days removed from when Edwards didn't play. And so, how much has he been able to work into practice? We don't know. But I would kind of lean on taking the points in an underdog situation. I think Miami, Ohio, in the favorite role in the conference tournament, they had the monkey on their back. They had just finished 31-0. They haven't been in this like nobody respects this mode though, and I think a little dangerous for a team in SMU that hasn't been in great form.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that at the end, because I was reading between the lines the whole time. I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that plus 8.5 points is something I should be seriously considering, and it sounds like you are as well.
Well, I'm going to pull up my number here. I'll just give you guys what our power rating number is just on this game. Let me find the tab here. I'm a boomer, so I gotta find the tabs here. And
you can't be a boomer. You have a backwards hat on. Those
well,
two do not mix.
So I would have it, but we have SMU downgraded slightly. So from their full season rating, we have this at about 6.5.
Yeah,
right now. And so, but that's with SMU with a slight downgrade. So I get 8.5. It would be that, like, if I just looked at the full season ratings for both teams, that's probably where you put the number.
Right. So what I want to do after this is I want to go through region by region. I want to talk about some of these sleeper teams, because you did a video that released earlier today about these sleeper teams, and you obviously did it before the bracket. Now that you see where the bracket is, are you feeling good or bad about them? Just depending on their draw. But before we do that, I want to show the people our NCAA bracket product and what they get inside of that. And what are you working on, Jason? I know you've been talking about your team notes here, and you have ratings on every team, putting the notes out. But on top of that, what are the people getting here with the NCAA bracket product that we have to offer?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get, like I said, our team notes and our ratings for all 68. You're going to get access to set up an unlimited number of actual brackets and get customized brackets based on your scoring, based on your pool size. We will generate for you a best bracket and 4 alternates that for whatever you tell us. You tell us I'm in a small pool, standard scoring, ESPN. You tell us I'm in a 500-person contest, top 10 gets paid out. We get upset bonuses. Whatever it is, it's going to dictate a little bit, I'll just give you an example. We talked about with the sleepers. UCLA is a 7. Maybe in a small standard scoring bracket, even though I love UCLA, I'm going to bet that, but I'm not going to play it in a small standard bracket. But if I'm getting upset bonuses or seed bonuses or things, I may be more tempted coming out of a region where I think UConn's vulnerable and UCLA just beat Michigan State. And I don't think it was a fluke. I think this current version of UCLA is top 20 caliber, top 15 caliber. I may be thinking more of that in an upset bonus pool, right? And so we're going to give you customized advice based on what our simulations show for your specific pool rules. So that's one thing. We have our advancement odds tables. You'll see how far we expect our percentages for each team. You'll see our data grid, popularity. We'll take in popularity because that matters, right? We're trying to find leverage in contests. So we're getting popularity numbers that start coming in tomorrow on how people are picking. And then we'll change our ratings slightly. I mean, we've got our stands, but we will look at where the market's going, monitor injury news, and if we think we need to make a tweak, we'll do that between Monday and Wednesday, and we'll release our final brackets on Wednesday late afternoon. But certainly we'll have brackets out by tomorrow evening for people to start looking at on our simulations. It takes overnight. The simulations have to run overnight. We have to set everything. We got to test things. That runs overnight, and we'll begin to look at them tomorrow morning and get them out to the public by tomorrow afternoon or evening.
The thing that I love most about this, and I'm speaking from a subscriber because this is my second year here at Pool Genius Team Rankings. And before then, I was a subscriber for many, many years. And the first thing I subscribed to was the March Madness Bracket Picks product. And the thing that I love is you can see all the data and you can make your decisions based off of that. Yeah. And then you can also just optimize for your bracket based off of your scoring system and the pool size in a matter of seconds, really. So you can be as quick and efficient as you want to. But if you want to make your own calls, see the data, see the public pick percentages and how that stacks up to the actual advancement odds based off of the market odds and our team ratings, you can go through that and do that at the data grid here. And that's one of my favorite tools overall. But I mean, the fact that you can be in, say, 5 to 10 March Madness pools, they're all different sizes, they're all different scoring systems. You can just input those details and get optimized brackets for those scoring systems, those rules, and everything. That's just a game changer. It's a game changer, really. And speaking of that, we also have a little bit of a game changer. I don't know if this is up to show yet. Our NCAA Survivor product is revamped, Jason. I know we got a lot of people who are coming over from our NFL Survivor product, and maybe they subscribed to NCAA Survivor last year. What can they expect this year? Because we've been working with our developers, our engineering department. They've been hard at work.
They've been hard at work.
Revamping this.
Yeah. Oh, I've been reviewing what they've got going on this weekend, Friday. It's so if you've used it in the past, it's mainly been a tool that just shows you like our data grid, and it'll show you kind of our grade on each team, and it'll show you data that you would need to know. Very helpful, but like advancement odds, odds to win there, a pick popularity estimate, things like that. But it's not customized to who you picked in the past. I've written an article where I've kind of given my thoughts on how to play teams and combos, but we didn't have a product that was like, you should pick team X because you already picked team Y. And so where we're going this year is now, after you've started making picks, we're going to have the same grades early on. We're going to have a lot of information, but you will see some differences in week one. By the Sweet 16, you're going to see it switch to like a path view mode where if it knows what teams you picked, who's still alive, who's not out of your picks, it's going to customize kind of the advice and tell you what your path odds are in for that entry. And so you can have different entries and you have different picks, and you can get different recommendations or what the best plays are for that entry based on who it's used. So it's going to take in all that stuff and just expand it more and give you more customized advice on what you've already done in your pool.
And this is truly a game changer, because to see all that information all in one place while tracking your entries and knowing who you already used, especially if you have multiple entries going, which I know a lot of us with all those pools that are out there in Survivor now, especially over on Splash. I know the season has a couple too, some cool ones to check out. You can actually go to our site, and we have an article of where to play NCAA Survivor pools. So you can see all your options there. But there's so many pools out there that and there's so much dead money too when it comes to NCAA Survivor pools, that I actually looked up a pool from last year. It was a $20 entry, 556 total entries in that. I found that 11% of the entries failed to make a pick and were eliminated based on that. And then 7% took an outright underdog in the first 2 rounds, just being way too risky when you don't need to be in those early rounds, just getting way too cute with it. So you're already ahead of 18% of the field if you consider that's sort of an average pool. Now, I understand Splash has a different approach on this where it will automatically assign you a team if you fail to make a pick, which that changes that a little bit. But there's also, if you look over on DraftKings Sportsbook, if you look over on the season, they do not have those backup picks on there. There are plenty of ways to get ahead of that. So, I mean, the biggest thing when it comes to NCAA Survivor pools, and this is what our tool will set up for you, is understanding how many picks you got to make when. Is it 1 pick per day? Is it 2 picks per day? Is it 1 pick per round? 3 picks in the first round, and then it usually changes the deeper that you go. Our tool will show you, hey, this team plays Thursday, Saturday, but in the Sweet 16, they actually play Friday, which is a huge difference if you're going day by day like that. So it lines up your path for you. It shows you the public pick percentage. and it shows you a pick grade on top of that while you're tracking your entry all the way through. So I think people who have been around for Survivor, been with us for our NFL Survivor product and NCAA Survivor in the past, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised with how robust this tool is in our offering. And if you are playing NCAA Survivor, I strongly recommend checking that out, going to poolgenius.com, going to NCAA Survivor right there at the top nav menu. So anything to add there, Jason, or you want to get back to the brackets?
No, I mean, I think you nailed the Survivor stuff. I think I got some questions here from Jonathan in our chat. I put out there, does anyone have a team request? I've got team notes on all 60. I had 69 prepared. I had San Diego State prepared. Sometimes I prepare up to 72. I made the call this year that I was pretty confident nobody outside of the 68 that made it San Diego State had a real chance. So I prepared 69 notes, but I have them. Akron was the request. So here's what I have. Come at me, Miami of Ohio fans. Akron has flown under the radar, but has been the best team in the MAC. Akron has one loss in the MAC now, same as Miami of Ohio. They played Purdue non-conference. They played a tough non-conference schedule. That's why they have, I think it's 5 losses. But here's what I have down for Akron. Akron has lost only 2 games since mid-December. A 3-point loss at Miami of Ohio and a loss at Sunbelt champion Troy when the Trojans, who are not a good outside shooting team typically, shot 14 of 27 from 3-point range. Akron has used 3 main lineups in different parts of the year, most recently with Bowen Hardman, the 3-point specialist, starting. The overall performance with this lineup is in line with the rest of the year. Akron is a fast-paced team that shoots a lot of threes. They are one of the shortest teams in D1 in this tournament, with only 1 starter over 6'6". Despite that, their overall rebounding and interior defensive numbers are solid. It's been outside shooting defense, probably when they collapsed down, that is ranked lower this year. So some of those things tell me, A, you've got a Texas Tech team, by the way, that likes, I think, play the opposite pace. So who can the underdog dictate some pace in this one with Akron? I think would be a question, because we know Texas Tech could be vulnerable. They aren't the same team without JT Toppin. They've said Christian Anderson is going to play. He suffered that injury that in many ways led the Big 12 to change the court back to a wood floor this last week when he had a muscle injury in his leg when he slipped. They say he's playing, but Texas Tech is not a deep team. They play at a slow pace. They like to get on the boards, but they're a good offensive team. They aren't as good as a typical Tech team that we've come to know defensively, including last year's team. So can Akron dictate pace and keep them off the boards? I think those are questions because, like I said, they have some size limitations, but now you don't have to deal with Toppin. Toppin, Tech's best inside player, is not there, and so Tech's more of a guardian of a team. It could be an interesting matchup. So that was the request there. And then we got some comments coming in. First glance, do I think the top teams 1 through 4 on the seed lines are as strong this year as last year?
I was going to ask you this exact question. So, Jonathan, if you want to be our producer from the comment section, you're nailing all these questions, because last year we had a historically great top tier. When you look at all the past tournaments, and we said this top tier, these 1 seeds are historically great, and sure enough, they all advanced to the Final Four. What do you see from that, and how do your ratings compare this year from last year and historically?
If we knew Duke was fully healthy, I'd say this 1 seed group is overall is in line with last year's and certainly well above average compared to most. And I think the 2s are I think there's some mixes within the 2s, 3s, 4, 5s. Like I said, St. John's we have higher than some 2 seeds. But for the most part, the 2s through 5s, I think the committee's got it right. There aren't too many teams lingering outside the top 5 who are going to be inside our top 20 in our power ratings. So for the most part, the power's up top. I think there are questions with Duke's injuries and how you want to treat that. It's a high variance situation, right? Because how long are they going to be without 2 of their key starters? Will they get either of them back? Will Caleb Foster play? I mean, the fact that the nature of that injury concerns me. Because Duke would be number 1 with a bullet, I think, at full health. And that just creates some variance around how you want to treat Duke in a bracket. Michigan has been sliding a little bit. they're still dominant. I mean, I think they're still a favorite to get to the Final Four. There's a little touch of Auburn last year to me, which made the Final Four but did not win the title. Auburn was the most dominant team, had Janai Broom, also a mid-major transfer like Yaxel Lindeborg, Conference Player of the Year, National Player of the Year type player, dominated in November and December, looked like clearly the best team. And by late February, early March, it looked like Duke and Florida had passed them. And that's what happened in the tournament, I think. And so Michigan this is a really good Michigan team. Are they the peak team that I don't know. That's a question. But they're still like a well above average one compared to most years. And Arizona, who I haven't even talked about, I mean, 2 losses in the Big 12. This team has they got size. This is a great 1 seed.
So going off of that and going to the 2 seeds.
Yeah.
Do you think any of these 2 seeds are vulnerable, especially if you look like second round matchups, maybe a Sweet 16 matchup here and there? I don't want to speak for you, but I think UConn might be one of those teams just because they're a little inconsistent.
They're
And
going
you
to be
look
a
at their
popular
loss
pick against, and I'm certainly, yeah. I mean, look, is a 2 seed vulnerable? Well, if you're going to start, you're going to start with the one that just lost by 20 and lost to a Marquette team that's not in the tournament in their final game before the tournament. UConn is not coming in the best form. They're going to have to find it. I know they have the national title pedigree with this program and with the coach. This team is going the other direction. They had some big wins in November and December, and so they're concerned, and they're paired with UCLA has to beat UCF, and certainly anything can happen in a 7-10 game. UCLA is a fairly sizable favorite for a 7 seed. And that makes sense. I've got them power rated well above UCF. I mean, this UCLA team at full strength. That's the question. Watch for the news on Tyler Bilodeau. They say he's playing. It was a mild knee sprain, but he did have to leave the Michigan State win at halftime. They had built up a double-digit lead by then, and they held on to it, and then they lost to Purdue in a game they were still in until the final 2 minutes, by the way. This UCLA team is rolling, but Bilodeau is kind of that. Given his size and ability to come out and shoot, just adds that element that I think turns them from a good team to one that really can knock off 1 and 2 seeds in this tournament if they get there, if they get on a run.
Yeah, and they said Donovan Dent too got banged up in that game.
And
they said he will play, and they said both of them will play. Obviously, Bilodeau's injury looked a little more serious than what they're saying happened to Dent. So that's going to be the more concerning one to take a look at and keep an eye on. And we definitely will be doing that as we get through Wednesday and get all these advancement odds out and all the reactions to the injury news and everything moving there.
Yeah.
One question before we go through the bracket here. Is there a team, and I have a sneaky suspicion we just talked about one of them maybe, but is there a team that just looks completely underseeded here? We talked about the possibility in your sleeper section earlier. Do you see anyone that really caught your eye when you're watching the selection show and you're like, wow? And I mean that with a caveat of how they're playing right now and their relative talent level and everything like that, where you have them rated.
Yeah. I mean, St. John's is a 5. I think they're a top 12 type team. I think Vanderbilt's honestly close. Last year, the 5s were pretty bad in overall. We had Memphis as a 5, and they were an outright dog. And we had Colorado State as the better team. Colorado State won that game. We don't have that situation this year. Vanderbilt and St. John's are strong 5s. Vanderbilt, if you look at all the metrics, is probably like 12th or 13th in a lot of power ratings. And they had a period where Duke Miles was out. So I just don't get that number on making them a 5. I thought they were a 4 going into the SEC tournament, and then they beat Florida. So those are the 2 that stand out to me. Virginia, I think, got properly seeded. I was a little worried about would the committee move them up to the 3 line, but I think they put them where they need to be. So for the most part, no. I mean, like UCLA on their resume is a 7 or 8. I just think that they haven't had their full lineup until the last 7 or 8 games. on the court consistently together, and they've shown why they were a preseason ranked team recently, but they weren't going to get seeded like it. So that's one. And so, yeah, I mean, and then you got my Missouri Tigers, who are going to lose in a heartbreaking fashion by turning it over, but look way better than they did in December with Trent Pierce playing and Jaden Stone as a starter. Missouri is, I think, a dangerous team, but one that will ultimately break your heart, as they have for me for the last 25 years.
Yeah, and you brought up Vanderbilt, and I'm glad you did. So I mentioned earlier that I am a Nebraska fan. I'm a Nebraska alum. Nebraska's the 4 seed there, right next to Vanderbilt, that they would meet if they both won. I told you a little while back, if Nebraska makes the Sweet 16, I think I'm going to have to go. I was a season ticket holder when I lived in Nebraska and when I was a student there. So I've been following this program that hasn't really rewarded me with many big wins. Yeah. I don't think I'm going to have that problem, though, in the future of potentially setting up my travel plans to go to the Sweet 16, because I don't think Nebraska is going to make it past Vanderbilt if that's the matchup in the second round. Nebraska just plays that matchup zone, and they kind of want you to take half contested threes, and Vanderbilt can shoot their way out of that, simply like you saw Purdue do in the Big Ten tournament there, just shoot their way out of that matchup zone. I think Vanderbilt can do that. I think this is a good draw for Vanderbilt, considering they got the 5 seed and maybe they got snubbed a little because of that. I think the matchups potentially work out pretty well here. The thing that doesn't work out here is a potential Sweet 16 matchup against Florida, a rematch of that SEC tournament game. And I think we can zoom out from here, go region by region, and say who you like overall and what you like shaping out, just based off of where this lays, and not necessarily going through your team rankings. Do you have any thoughts of the South region? Is it Florida or bust, basically?
No, I don't think it's Florida or bust. I do not at all. This Florida team was playing really well in conference play until what happened to Vanderbilt. But what happened with Vanderbilt is, I think, the cause for concern for Florida, which is this front line is dominant, and they can dominate people on the boards and inside. How's the backcourt going to hold up? We saw them go against a really strong backcourt in Vandy, and they turn the ball over and they get outshot. And they are not a good shooting team, and their guards this year are not what they had last year in the title run. So they are vulnerable if those guards don't play well, or if they come up against a team that can somewhat match their front line and beat them at guard play. So you got to have teams that can match their front line, which is a tall ask. But we've got Houston and Illinois in this region on the other side. And if either of those get through, I think they can match up with Florida. I mean, Illinois' got all the size in the world and can score and can shoot way better than Florida in a one-game setting. And Houston can play the snot out of defense, and they aren't going to back down from a Florida matchup inside, and they're going to make those guards beat them. So I like that. We saw Vandy just win that game. I don't know if your Huskers can do it. And then my sleeper, I know that they don't pop out to people. Clemson, first of all, they got to beat Iowa, who is Drake from last year. Basically, if you watched Drake last year, that's Iowa with a couple other players. So they're going to put the ball, slow it down, try to run offense. Clemson also likes to play at slow pace. I think Clemson certainly can lose to Iowa. It's an 8-9 game. But of the two, if Clemson can advance, I think they are the danger for Florida, because they can defensive rebound. They play at slow pace. They don't turn the ball over, which Florida does, and they control boards. So they're probably going to at least somewhat neutralize Florida's strength there. You get Florida in a one-game setting with a dog. This is how teams like Loyola Chicago, Butler back in the day, beat top seeds. Slow the pace. Make it a one-possession game. Don't give up second-chance points. Don't turn the ball over, and just grind out games. And Clemson has that profile. So I think it's a dangerous path for Florida. I don't think it's Florida or bust at all here. I think any of the top 3 seeds can both lose early, but also emerge out of this region. It wouldn't surprise me if any of those top three. Vanderbilt slightly, but I still think Vanderbilt's good enough if they can break through. That McNeese matchup is slight cause for concern. I think McNeese is one of the better mid-majors you could draw, and they drew them. That's going to be a guard-oriented game. McNeese likes to turn people over. Vanderbilt likes to turn people over, so it's going to be an interesting matchup.
So we got a little bit of preliminary data here on the public pick percentages. It is extremely early, so take this with not 3 grains of salt, right? But I just want to at least bring this up to you because we talk about this in our bracket write-ups. We talk about this all the time that when you're picking your bracket, you're not going for a prediction contest. You're not going necessarily just who you think's going to win. You're going to beat the other people in your pool, in your specific pool. And that means making picks that they're not and getting a leg up on them without necessarily being too risky, taking on too much risk for your scoring system. So you talk about Florida there. We still know that Florida's a good team, strong team. They have some vulnerabilities compared to last year's national championship team. But they can still do it. They've been one of the hottest teams in college basketball over the past few months, that last loss notwithstanding. Looking at these preliminary numbers of champion picks, Florida, 7.4% is the lowest number 1 seed pick.
That feels low.
That's not really surprising considering you have Duke number 1. That's predictable, right? 27%. Predicting Duke. I don't know if it's going to settle there. It'll probably come down a little bit. Arizona, 18%. Michigan, 14% as the champ. Florida, 7%. Houston, 5.5%. UConn, 3%. That's what we have for the preliminary data. How do you feel about that and like where your numbers align, where the advancement odds align if you just saw that right now?
So I don't have access because we are running the simulations tonight. So I don't know what our numbers are going to kick out exactly. I can have a decent idea, but based on what you just said, Florida is low picked. Now, I think they have a reasonably tough draw coming out of that other side of the bracket. Because Illinois probably does not. I mean, North Carolina is a relatively injured 6th seed. So it would be somewhat surprising if Illinois lost to the teams in that quadrant. St. Mary's can slow it down against Houston, but I think Houston's clearly the class of that quadrant. So if either of those two teams advance, it makes for a tough Elite 8 matchup. That's going to be close to a pick'em, honestly. It's going to be maybe Florida by 1 or 2. I think by the time we get there. So I get that. Of the ones you mentioned, I was sitting here going to say, there's a question in here. Somebody asked, who's your pick? And if I were pick of integrity, like as I sit here, initial gut reaction, Arizona. That doesn't mean that like I'm in every bracket I'm playing Arizona. That doesn't mean I'm, I want to see where all the numbers and the simulations run out. But if you ask me, which team do I think is the best as we enter this tournament, has the least questions for me, it is Arizona. We saw them overcome a Pete injury, and so they have that downgraded with him in the full lineup. They're elite as much as any team last year or the last 5 years.
So that brings up a question, and this was asked too. What's your thoughts on Arizona, Arkansas potential Sweet 16 game? That would be my thoughts. That is must-watch TV. I mean, I don't know about you, but you had Arkansas down as one of your sleeper picks, one of your future picks that you nailed to win the SEC tournament. That would be a great game. Like I think Arizona has a little more balance, obviously, but you don't know how hot Acuff's going to run any given game, and he really is the variable there to whether they're going to make a serious run or not because they're capable.
This Arkansas team is dangerous because of their offense. Their defense is not. I worry a little bit about that against a potential Arizona matchup. They are not great. They're okay, but certainly not great on the defensive boards. They have some size, but it's not like it's not banger size like Arizona's strength. Um, so that's one where I say that, but like I said, Arkansas is a high variance team. I mentioned one of the comparables when I'm talking about sleepers to this Arkansas team was that Trey Burke Michigan team that did beat a loaded Kansas team in the Sweet 16 in overtime. He hit a big shot. It was a shootout, and then they went to the final. So this feels like the Arkansas team that certainly is a big dog to an Arizona type team. In a really large pool at high variance, could I see scenarios where they're also pot odds plays for Arkansas if they can get past this game to make a deep run with one of the most talented scorers we've seen at the guard position as a freshman in a while, other freshmen, a team that's emerging and that can score as well as anybody in the tournament. I mean, Arkansas in their current state is probably a top 3 offense in this tournament. Question is on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like, we're talking about that matchup, and yeah, certainly that's where the probabilities will point to is Arizona versus Arkansas in the Sweet 16. I don't want to overlook a potential Arkansas-Wisconsin second round game.
Oh,
that would be a good game too. Wisconsin's more than capable of pulling that off. It really comes down to which Arkansas team shows up, which is, as we're saying this whole time. So anything else that you are looking at across these, or should we go region by region?
We can go region by region and just talk about, because we haven't even talked that much about the East. The East was one that came right away and was like, wow, what's going on in the East?
First thing, I want to see if this works. I want to bring this up here. Nope, it's not going to work. I wanted to show an image of our bracket prediction tool is up on ESPN right now. So if you're playing Eliminator Challenge, or not Eliminator Challenge, which they do have over on ESPN too, but the Tournament Bracket Challenge over on ESPN, you can look at our predictor and our analyzer over there. We have the Pool Genius tools now synced in with ESPN there, so definitely check it out. You can get those tools over on poolgenius.com to check it out. But I just saw that message and I wanted to highlight it. Maybe I'll bring it up here. Brock sent over a screenshot, so I'll see if I can grab it and put it up here. But let's look at the East real quick, where Duke is the #1 seed. You had Ohio State as a sleeper. You also had them as an 8 or 9 seed, knowing that they would have to run into a 1 if they won that first round game. You were also a little bit high on TCU in the Big 12 tournament,
I've been playing TCU's game picks. They're better than their full season numbers. They're a team that lost right away and had some bad results in the non-con, but their rotation is very different now. They're an undersized team. I think for both these, this is a tough 8-9 game. Of the ones, this is the best, I think, matchup 8-9 game. Duke is Duke, and even with 2 starters out, we saw them win the ACC tournament and beat Virginia and have enough to hold off Florida State, handle Clemson, and then win a grinder against Virginia. But are they more vulnerable in this game? Maybe, right? Because this is probably the game when they won't have Caleb Foster, when they'll be still a little limited on who they have available, for sure, compared to what could be the case by the Elite Eight, right? Ohio State's better than their full season numbers, and their full season numbers are better than an 8 seed. They've been playing better down the stretch. They're better when they have their full front line. They just got a key rotation piece who was able to, for the first time in like 2 months, play some minutes in the Big Ten tournament. So they're going to be at a little better strength up front to compete. And so I think this Ohio State team is dangerous, but TCU can certainly beat them. This is a great matchup. And then you get to St. John's. I mean, this part of the bracket. St. John's to me is the 4 seed, and they're the better team. That doesn't mean they can't lose to Kansas. And I talked about Northern Iowa. Kansas is so inconsistent, even as, they've gotten healthier here recently, even as Peterson's played more.
Period.
Yeah, played. I mean, he played 9 straight games. He played 37 minutes again in the game they went to the wire against TCU. So that's something we haven't seen. But even with that happening, they've had like some stinkers. I mean, they got the doors blown off against Houston. They lost at Arizona State. And then they've had games like where they housed Kansas State. It's been like a wild ride. And so what Kansas team is showing up? Because certainly when the bad version of Kansas shows up, they can lose this 4-13 game just because that's how they've played on offense sometimes. They're a good defensive team. But I like St. John. I mean, St. John's, this is a legit, not a great draw being in Duke's region with Kansas and all that stuff. But St. John's, to me, is a top 12 team that could be on the 3 line, and they're on the 5 line.
Yeah, and then you look towards the bottom half of the East region.
Loaded in depth.
Exactly. I was going to say that. I don't think there's one dominant force here, but we talked plenty about UCLA.
Yeah, cat out of the bag. When you look at our ratings, I feel confident saying we will not have UConn in our top 10 based on how they finish.
That's a pretty big determination because I feel like a lot of average people picking.
Yeah. So I'm hoping to see good public numbers on UConn still because
they're in the national championship numbers as what, the 6th most popular?
Yeah. So we've got, I'll just tell you, there's not much difference in our power ratings between UConn, Michigan State, Louisville, and UCLA. There's not. Now, those lower seeds, UCLA and Michigan and Louisville, have to play tougher matchups in the first round, which increase the risk they don't make it. But if these teams get through, this is the region I could see any of those 4 making a run to the Elite Eight. I don't know that anybody else can. UCF has too many defensive concerns for me. Can they pull an upset of UCLA? Sure. Will they do it twice in a row? I don't see it. South Florida, a little bit of more of an unknown and playing better. I could squint and see that just because we've seen some so I don't call them mid-major out of American. They're their own category, like the group of 5. But South Florida is kind of slept on, I think, and better. Like this team wasn't going to get in that large. I thought they could have if they did not win this conference tournament. As it turns out, they were able to handle business. They've been really good of late. And then Michigan State, I think they're missing some. They've lost a little something. I mean, this Michigan State was peaked about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And since then, I'm not sure they've played like a top seed, which is why they got bumped down for Purdue, I think, at the last minute. Michigan State's had a core 4 that starts every game. Fears when he's not kicking people, right? And then you have our human highlight reel, Carr, and the front, Kohler and Cooper. And then they've kind of rotated and been trying to figure it out with that final spot. But the problem is they had their best outside shooter broke his foot in early February. And so I don't think this team is as good as it could be because it doesn't have the same number of shooters that can stretch out the opponent and space the floor. So I think Michigan State's maybe not quite as good as their overall numbers, but still capable. They've got a good starting core. But do they have the outside depth at shooting to, I think, make a deep run is the concern there. So this is a balanced region that I could see a lot of things happening.
Yeah, and I think Louisville is a wild card here. It really comes down to how well they're shooting the ball because they have all the ingredients to go on a run here. Their analytics, their metrics, maybe they're juiced up from those early non-conference games, but they look great across the board. But it really comes down to how hot they are shooting.
Mikael Brown hasn't played. They say Coach says he's playing. Says he'll be available. He's close, he said. Yeah. Before the last game when he didn't play, he said he's close. But what does that mean? Is he at 100% because he's their best player? There's a lot of variability around Louisville. Like you could tell me anything happened with Louisville, and I probably believe it in this tournament.
Yeah, let's go down here. We talked about this region a little bit. I think we can go quickly through this. You talked about Clemson as another potential sleeper, but they are a team that would potentially run into Florida in the second round, and I'm not ready to pencil them in quite yet over Iowa. But why do you like Clemson? You mentioned that they're a team that just their pace, their rim protection, their front line.
If they can dictate. Now, they did lose their starting post. They have depth up front. I think they can overcome it. But they did lose their starting center, one of their 3 rotation frontline players. He played, about half the minutes, and he's out. for his ACL in the first game of the ACC tournament. So that's an impacting factor. But I still think they can play the style that can frustrate teams as an underdog. Now they got to get through that first game to have that. That's why I like Clemson, though, is I think their style fits what we've seen, some underdogs that can frustrate better teams in tournament play.
Yeah, and then you look at the bottom half of this bracket, which I already know who you like, and I would have said this before the tournament.
We didn't even talk about this. Houston's playing in this South region's in Houston.
Yeah, that's big.
So they gave
that
Houston,
is a big thing.
not the 1 seed, the home.
It might as well be.
Yeah, I mean they gave
home
them.
if
they can get to the Sweet 16, they're going to be playing in not at their home arena, but in downtown Houston. I think this game's where the Rockets play. Probably is where they're playing the regional, or are they playing it even at the football stadium? I have to look, but they're playing in Houston. So it'll be a short drive for those that don't know. I'm also a U of H alum, proud U of H alum.
U of H and Mizzou.
Yeah, grad school, law school. But when I was there, they were not good in basketball. Clyde Drexler was the coach, if we want to go back. So we were not tempted to go to many games. This program has changed things dramatically from 25 years ago. But yeah, campus, probably 10-minute drive from campus. So
here's my question to you. If it came down to an Illinois-Houston game here,
man, that's fantastic.
What like would you be leaning towards Illinois there? What would that game look like? And do you think the Illini would have the upper hand there?
Oh gosh. I mean,
it's a contrast in style, and that's part of what makes it really intriguing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're going to ask the question of, can Houston score with Illinois?
We have these two power rated within less than a point, within about a point of each other, less than a point. Obviously, things can change as we get the results in the tournament. But if I were said it right now, Houston would be a slight favorite because they're playing in Houston. Because I'm power rated roughly equally, but it would be a fantastic. That would be a Sweet 16 matchup. That would be lights out. Now, I'm going to draw an analogy for this Illinois team because on paper they look great and they have all of it. And I've been touting, I think Illinois this and that, and then sometimes they disappoint me when I pick them. Are they the Buffalo Bills of college basketball?
I like that. No,
I'm serious. Like the team people are like, they have all the talent. They should do this. And the road's there.
And they just can't quite.
They've half their losses have come in overtime.
Yeah.
And the other two others were in close games, and they've had leads in games like that UCLA game against Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament. It's like it's all there, but then something just doesn't happen for them. Will that switch in the basically the playoffs in the bracket? Because by the metrics, they're a top 5-6 team. They could have been a 1 seed if they'd gone 4-0 in OT instead of 0-4. They probably would be instead of Florida. So.
And by the way, I'm not overlooking what the committee did here. Penn getting in as the 14th seed.
Yeah.
Fran McCaffrey, the Iowa coach, former Big Ten coach, going against the Big Ten team and Brad Underwood's team in Illinois. I see what they did there. You can't get that one past me, committee. Yeah. Let's go up and over to
what are the odds Fran get the technical in that game, by the way?
Fran is getting teed up. You better believe it. He's going to drink an energy drink before just to ensure that he gets teed up.
Nice.
So we got Arizona. We know you like Arizona. We know Arizona is on the board for national championship. We talked about a potential collision course with Arkansas in the Sweet 16. So let's look at the bottom half of this.
Yeah.
Purdue as a 2 seed. Purdue was great in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah.
Purdue before the Big Ten tournament, not so great, kind of fading down the stretch. The defense not living up to your expectations that you would usually see out of the Boilermakers. Which Purdue team is for real, or is it somewhere in the middle? And are they capable of getting out of this bottom half of the bracket into the Elite Eight? If not, who are the teams that put them in jeopardy?
I mean, they're certainly capable. But like you said, the issue has been when they've come up against certain teams and they were able to beat Michigan in the title game. When the defense goes from okay to we can't get a stop, they've lost games, and that's what happens at times. Their offense is usually pretty good. I mean, Braden Smith is who he is. He's going to get you a lot of assists, facilitate the offense, not turn it over much. Highly efficient offense. Can they get the stops against the good offensive teams that you're going to meet as you advance into the tournament? Does this region have them? I mean, because I don't know that these are like your best offensive. It's probably a decent draw for Purdue from that standpoint. Like, there's not like this. Like, Arkansas would concern me being in the same region as Purdue, for example. Like, a team that can just light them up and just beat them in a shootout. I don't know that. I mean, Miami, Missouri is going to have to, anything can happen, but that's probably a better case matchup for what Purdue is looking at. Missouri's defense can be quite questionable, and so they can get exposed a little bit, and Missouri can turn the ball over. Miami, strong rebounding team, but are they good enough on offense to push Purdue? We'll see. Gonzaga, what's their status going to be with their, with their front line? Names escape me here. Braden Huff, been out all conference play. We are at the edge of where they said originally his timeline was, which is probably mid-March, but we haven't heard any clear and definitive positive news about Braden Huff. I think Gonzaga is going to need Braden Huff by the Sweet 16 if they get there to beat Purdue. And BYU and Texas is a good offensive team with poor defensive numbers. NC State's been inconsistent. BYU obviously lost Richie Saunders. It's not the best version of BYU, but DeBonce has been taking over. This isn't a terrible draw for BYU, even without Saunders. So, I think they could meet a team in the Sweet 16 depending on Braden Huff being healthy for Gonzaga or BYU continuing to trend upward and just leaning into DeBonce taking over. That could give them trouble.
Yeah, and let's go down to the Midwest region. Looking at Michigan and Ohio State are the big dogs out of this region. Virginia also in there. In Tennessee, I want to get your take on Tennessee because
I've had a question in the chat about Tennessee. So
and I've been saying this for weeks. If you've been watching our live streams, I was like, Tennessee intrigues me rounding into tournament time. I don't know how much they intrigue me anymore. I want to hear what you have on Tennessee.
Tennessee always intrigues me until they lose in the tournament. So Tennessee. Here's the thing. Tennessee's been so injury impacted. I think they're up there. Like, if we were to line up, they're in the top 10 of teams in this tournament and have to deal with a lot of injuries and consistent. I think the most they've played, they're I think I have it in my notes here for the teams. Tennessee's what you would consider like their best lineup is probably played together like 6 times as the starters.
Yeah, that's a big thing. That's a big determination of how far do they go.
So, I mean, they just got Nate Ament back for the SEC tournament. They started to get, they lost Cade Phillips to an season-ending shoulder injury in December. They've had injuries all year long. JP Estrella was out for a while. So they are one of those teams that can match up with the big boys on the front line when they're healthy. We saw them get beat up by Vanderbilt twice with the Vanderbilt's guard play. Vanderbilt able to neutralize them enough on the boards and win those games when I thought it was a bad matchup for Vandy. Vandy is one of those teams that has changed my mind about them. I mean, they don't have size, but they continue to play well in these games. And they beat Florida. They beat Tennessee twice. They beat teams with good front lines. So Tennessee have the kind of the sauce to make a run as a sleeper out of the 6. It's just whether the injuries and they hold up because they just haven't been able to play together.
Well, and then you look at a potential 6 versus 3 Virginia. Virginia's going to be able to match up.
That's a slugfest. If Tennessee Virginia ends up being the matchup, man, that's going to be the total on that one's going to be under 130. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Bottom half of this region, Iowa State looking like the chalk down here. Does Kentucky or Santa Clara, do they potentially pose a threat to what would likely be the Cyclones in the second round game. I know Santa Clara, little bit on your sleeper list. So
they are. I don't
like
dislike them in round one. I have to think. I mean, this Iowa State team can be a little inconsistent at their best in their A game. They can beat every team in this tournament. They've also shown they're a little less consistent than those top teams. And they look good in the Big 12 tournament. So you never know. Like they expend so much energy. Their coach is a bit of a maniac. He's a great coach. Are they going to peak? Last year they came in and had injuries, and it really impacted them. They bowed out early. So what version are we going to see? It looks like the version's trending up. So I would be surprised. I don't know that Kentucky and Santa Clara have enough to knock up this Iowa State team, who on their best days, a top 5 team in this tournament. But we'll see. I mean, the team that Kurt certainly can score more than a lot of Iowa State teams that we've seen have issues in the past. I think a better offensive version of an Iowa State team than we've seen recently. Although Justin Jefferson did struggle for a stretch in Big 12 play.
Iowa State, I just looked at this. The 6th best odds to win the tournament.
Well, doesn't surprise me.
I mean, so you're looking at the 1 seeds, then you got Houston, and then you got Iowa State, which obviously
there are 6 highest rated. We have them 6th in our power ratings entering the tournament.
That's
and they're on the 2 seed, and
they scare me as someone to take that.
They
far.
just lost to Arizona on a shot at the buzzer on they had Arizona matched up on the team who probably is one of your favorites.
Yeah, I mean. I don't know. It's just something about their makeup. They're not a great free throw shooting team. I don't love them away from
Purdue and just
home
blew the doors off of Purdue in December, right? I mean, that's what they're capable of, which is crazy. So,
okay, all right. So it is we're over an hour here. So I want to remind you all that if you like the content that we're putting out here, if you're watching us over on YouTube, please subscribe, because we're going to be putting this content out all week. Basically, we got so many videos planned for you guys. We're going to do a complete breakdown of the bracket picks. We're going to run through this as soon as we get more data in our system. We get that public pick popularity. We can come through and isolate some of these matchups more, pinpoint some of the value plays a little bit more. And if you are an NCAA Survivor player, we already have a strategy video up. You can go and watch that so you know what to expect. Go to poolgenius.com, check out our tool, but we will be putting up another NCAA Survivor Picks video coming up in the next few days. And obviously go over to poolgenius.com, check it out. This is going to be your main command center for March Madness, everything brackets, everything Survivor, betting too. We got betting picks coming out here over on BetIQ. Jason's running hot.
For those that allow me that subscribe to us and our bracket picks or Survivor subscribers, allow me to, go get some Whataburger and feed myself healthily this week as I'm in the bunker. I'm down in my basement in the bunker. I could show you the setup behind me. I have the TV, the lounger. I got the Papa Shot, or not the Papa Shot, because I didn't bring that over from my mom's house, but I got the mini hoop that I can shoot at right here. For those that subscribe and allow me to support this lifestyle, I will tell you, we'll also do some video and other content. I mean, we'll go in depth explaining why certain bracket picks are what they are, because we've talked about teams, but when we run these simulations, things emerge, and so the subscribers get those key details of like why we're picking certain teams in certain things. There's some non-intuitive stuff that pops up in how you pick a bracket at certain pool sizes. We'll break that down. And so look for that as well.
It's great stuff. It is we are working around the clock here over at Pool Genius, but I know I don't want to speak for you, Jason, but I feel I can confidently do so in saying that we just absolutely love this time of year. We're kind of wired for this thing. Jason's getting Whataburger with all the support and everything coming in. I'm getting White Monster to keep me going. That's my flavor of choice. So we would really appreciate it if you subscribed. And if you're watching us over on X, go ahead and follow us over there, because we're going to be putting out all sorts of tidbits. We had a couple tweets earlier today. people really latched onto of stuff that we've been seeing just from the data that we have. We're going to be posting some pick popularity stuff, value plays, just all the little tidbits that we see that we're putting into the subscriber. We're going to be feeding those as little snacks over there on YouTube and X. So definitely subscribe to those. Check out poolgenius.com. Do you have any parting words here, Jason, before we get out of here?
No, let's I think I need to actually get some picks out. We've been talking, and I probably lost some line value here. So we need to jump into it and see what we got. That's my next thing. And eating, because this is from like hours ago.
Gotta go get a refill. Can you take that to Whataburger and get a refill?
I'll go up there, get a Dr. Pepper float and ask them to hook me up.
There you go. One more thing, I put this over in the YouTube comment section. If you have more questions, they come up, or you're watching this as a replay, hop in Discord. Ask us any bracket question. We're going to come through. We'll answer those. We'll hopefully answer your questions more when we do this bracket write-up and we put out all of our information for subscribers. So that would be the first place to look to get all that information at your fingertips to make the best bracket choices and NCAA survivor choices as possible this year. I'm looking forward to all of it, especially NCAA survivor. Of course, bracket pools, that's the first form of gambling that I ever did. So it has a soft spot for me. I think I speak for a lot of us that, that was sort of the first introduction into wagering, if you will, even if it was just for lunch money here and there. But yeah, I'm looking forward.
I still haven't forgiven Maurice Newby, by the way. Nobody knows who that is. The Northern Iowa guy that hit the three-pointer against Missouri at the end of the game in 1990, 3-14 upset. Bad memories.
Well, yes. Hopefully we don't have another one of those.
Young Jason's heart.
Hopefully we don't have another one of those with the Miami Missouri game on tap in that 7-10 matchup again. And hopefully, for my sake, Nebraska gets its first ever NCAA tournament team. The only tournament.
I'm rooting for you, buddy.
The only team in the Power 5 conference to not win a tournament game. They only said it like 600 times. You just have to beat
a dude named Troy.
They only said it like 600 times on the CBS selection show. I'm like, yeah, we know. You don't have to rub it in all the time.
You just got to be the guy that drives a pickup truck named Troy, and you're good.
I don't know. I'm still nervous, but let's see how it goes. It should be fun regardless. Subscribe, follow us over on X. We're going to be dishing out some good stuff all week. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Catch us over at poolgenius.com. Have a good night and good luck on your bracket picks.